Brooke Skylar Richardson, a former cheerleader and honor from the quiet town of Carlisle, Ohio, was the epitome of small-town charm and ambition. Known for her academic prowess and her energetic performances on the sideline, the young woman seemed to have a bright future ahead. Yet, beneath this outward projection of normality, Brooke was waging a private war. She struggled with eating disorders and battled mental health issues, fighting a silent battle that few could see. However, in July of 2017, the idyllic image of Brooke was about to be shattered irrevocably. On a day that started just like any other, authorities received a phone call that would shake the community to its core. The caller was none other than Brooke herself, and the story she had to share was one of unparalleled horror. In her backyard, she confessed, were the remains of a newborn baby, her baby. News of the chilling discovery spread like wildfire through the small community. The Richardson home, where children once played neighbors exchanged friendly waves, was suddenly transformed into a haunting crime scene. The revelation of this unimaginable act, a dark secret harbored by the cheerleader next door, sent shockwaves the town. The whispers began. The questions, heavy and unsettling, hung in the air. How could this happen? Why would she do this? Brooke's hidden struggles were now cast in a horrifying new light. Her story, once of promise, had become a grim tale of tragedy. The discovery of the baby's remains set the stage for a crime story that would captivate the nation. The depth of the horror only deepened as the details emerged, leaving the community and the country grappling with an unthinkable tragedy. This is the chilling beginning of a crime story that shocked America. Brooke Skylar Richardson, from an American sweetheart to an alleged criminal. Brooke Skylar Richardson, a young woman from the small town of Carlisle, Ohio, confessed a shocking secret to her doctor. The all-American cheerleader, adored by many for her infectious enthusiasm and charming personality, revealed the unspoken birth and death of her child. This confession, hidden deep beneath her radiant smile and cheerful demeanor, sent ripples through her doctor's office. After learning of the tragic event, the doctor was obliged to report this to the authorities. It was a call to duty, a cry for justice for the life that was lost. The authorities were swift to act. An investigation was launched immediately, with detectives and police officers swarming the Richardson household. The quiet, all-American household was suddenly the epicenter of a criminal investigation. The news spread like wildfire through the small town of Carlisle. It was an unimaginable crime for the close-knit community. The town's golden girl, the high-achieving student who had plans to study nursing at the University of Cincinnati, was now under a cloud of suspicion. The radiant smile and sparkling eyes that once turned heads now hid a chilling secret. The idyllic image was shattered, and the town was in shock. Brooke's life, once a picture of the American dream, was turned upside down. This was the darker, disturbing side of Brooke Skylar Richardson that the world was not ready for. As the saying goes, appearances can be deceiving. And in this case, it was a deception that shook the entire town of Carlisle to its core. Imagine a secret so dark it could shatter your world in an instant. This was the reality for Brooke Skylar Richardson, a once picture-perfect cheerleader, when she confessed to her doctor about the birth and death of her child. It was a secret she had kept hidden, a secret that would soon have profound implications. Brooke found herself in a doctor's office, her heart pounding as she revealed the harrowing truth. She had given birth in the middle of the night, alone and terrified. The baby, she claimed, was stillborn, a life that had barely begun, snuffed out in the silence of a suburban home. The doctor, taken aback by this revelation, knew he had a duty to report such an incident. He promptly informed the authorities about the alleged birth and death. The magnitude of Brooke's confession was not lost on him, nor was the responsibility he held in his hands. The secret was no longer just hers to bear. The wheels of justice began to turn swiftly. Law enforcement, armed with the knowledge of this clandestine birth and death, started their investigation. They arrived at the Richardson home, a place that once symbolized an idyllic suburban life, now a potential crime scene. As the news of Brooke's confession spread, shockwaves were sent through the community. The cheerleader, the girl next door, was now at the center of a potential criminal investigation. The crime, if proven true, was unimaginable. The loss of a child is a tragedy, but the potential concealment of such a loss was a whole different level of horror. In a matter of days, Brooke's life was no longer her own. Her secret, once whispered in the quiet confines of a doctor's office, was now public knowledge. Every move she made, every word she said, was under the microscope. Her once picture-perfect world was shattering around her, piece by piece. With one confession, Brooke's perfect world began to crumble. A courtroom, a jury, and a young woman's fate hanging in the balance. The trial of Brooke Skylar Richardson, a case that would captivate the nation, was poised to begin. The once bubbly cheerleader from Carlisle, Ohio, now faced grave charges that could alter her life forever. She was accused of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, child endangerment, and abuse of a corpse. The prosecution argued that Brooke, a high school senior at the time, had secretly given birth in the middle of the night at her family home, killed her newborn daughter, and then buried her in the backyard. The defense, however, painted a starkly different picture. They claimed Brooke had given birth to a stillborn baby, panicked, and buried her out of fear and heartbreak. The public's reaction to the case was explosive. The story of the picture-perfect cheerleader facing such serious charges was sensationalized and polarized opinions. Some saw Brooke as a villain, a cold-hearted killer who had committed an unthinkable crime. Others saw her as a victim, a terrified young woman who had made a tragic mistake in a moment of panic. The court of public opinion was divided, and the media circus around the trial only intensified as the days rolled on. As the trial approached, Brooke's life was under a microscope. Every aspect of her past was scrutinized, and each detail was used to build a narrative about who she was and what she was capable of. The prosecution painted her as a heartless murderer, while the defense portrayed her as a scared, confused teenager who had been thrust into an unimaginable situation. All eyes were on the small town of Carlisle as the trial began. The courthouse was packed with reporters, eager to document every moment. The jury, a group of 12 men and women, was tasked with the monumental responsibility of deciding Brooke's fate. As the gavel came down marking the start of the trial, the tension in the room was palpable. As the trial commenced, the nation watched in anticipation. Every story has two sides. But can a defense save Brooke from a lifetime behind bars? The defense's case was built on a foundation of empathy and medical science. Their argument? Brooke Skylar Richardson's baby was stillborn, and in her panic, she buried the infant in the backyard out of fear and desperation. The defense team painted a picture of a frightened teenager, not a cold-hearted killer. They described Brooke as a young woman under immense pressure, grappling with the shock of a stillbirth, alone and terrified. They argued that Brooke was a victim herself, trapped in an unimaginable situation. The defense team contended that Brooke was unprepared for the reality of her situation, and that her actions, though regrettable, were not criminal but stemmed from fear and confusion. To support this argument, the defense turned to the medical evidence. They highlighted the inconclusive autopsy report, which failed to determine a definitive cause of death. They pointed out that no traces of physical trauma were found on the baby's remains. A key aspect of the defense's argument was an examination of the placenta and umbilical cord, both of which, they argued, showed signs consistent with intrauterine growth restriction, a condition that could lead to stillbirth. They argued that this medical condition, unknown to Brooke, led to the tragic stillbirth. Moreover, the defense called on expert witnesses, including pathologists and obstetricians, who testified that the evidence was consistent with Brooke's story. They argued that the baby's size and weight were significantly below average, potentially pointing to a stillbirth. The defense's argument aimed to shift the narrative from a tale of cold-blooded murder to a tragic story of a scared young woman who made a grave error in judgment under immense emotional distress. With the defense's argument laid bare, would the jury believe Brooke's story? A verdict that could change a young woman's life forever. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation, the silence almost deafening. The jury, a diverse group of men and women, had been deliberating for hours behind closed doors. Their task? To determine the fate of Brooke Skylar Richardson, a former cheerleader whose life had taken a tragic turn. The moment had arrived. The jury filed back into the court, their faces unreadable. The judge called for silence, and then he read out the verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Brooke Skylar Richardson, guilty." The words hung in the air like a chilling fog, the finality of them sinking into the hearts of everyone present. But what led the jury to this decision? The prosecution had presented a compelling case, painting a picture of a young woman who had committed an unthinkable crime. They argued that Brooke had concealed her pregnancy, given birth in secret, and then ended her newborn's life. The evidence, they claimed, was irrefutable. The defense, however, painted a different picture. They portrayed Brooke as a scared young girl, terrified of her conservative family's reaction to her pregnancy. They argued that the baby was stillborn, and that Brooke had panicked and buried the body in the backyard. But the jury had to consider more than just the arguments presented in court. They had to weigh the evidence, consider the testimonies, and ultimately decide beyond a reasonable doubt whether Brooke was guilty. It was not an easy task, but it was their duty. The jury's decision was not unanimous, but the majority ruled in favor of the prosecution. The evidence, they believed, pointed to Brooke's guilt. The fact that she had concealed her pregnancy, given birth in secret, and then buried the body in the backyard was damning. And so, the verdict was delivered. Brooke Skylar Richardson, once a beloved cheerleader and a promising young woman, was now a convicted criminal. The courtroom erupted into a cacophony of whispers and gasps, the reality of the verdict settling in. This was the end of a tragic chapter in Brooke's life, a chapter that had started with a secret and ended with a conviction. Brooke Skylar Richardson, once a beloved cheerleader, now a convicted criminal. When the gavel falls, what remains of a life once filled with promise? In the wake of the trial, a community was left reeling, its faith in the picture-perfect image of the American teenager shattered. Even as the courtroom emptied, the verdict continued to echo. Its reverberations felt far beyond the confines of the courthouse. The public's reaction was swift and divided. Some saw justice served, while others perceived a gross miscarriage of it. The case of Brooke Skylar Richardson had become a spectacle, a national conversation that challenged societal norms and expectations. Brooke, once a cheerleader with dreams as bright as her smile, was now a convict, her future overshadowed by the past. Her sentence reflected the gravity of her actions. She was given a suspended sentence of 3 years, followed by a 7-year probation period. The court's decision was a stark reminder of the consequences of her actions, a price to be paid for a life lost. The sentence, however, was more than an individual punishment. It was a ripple that spread, touching the lives of those who knew Brooke. Her family, once pillars of their community, found themselves under scrutiny. Relationships strained, friendships tested, their daily lives became a constant struggle to reclaim a semblance of normalcy. The community, too, felt the impact. The case had exposed the darker underbelly of their idyllic town, revealing fractures within the societal fabric. It forced introspection, a re-evaluation of values and beliefs, a collective soul-searching that left no one untouched. The aftermath of the trial was not just about the sentence, it was about the loss of innocence, the shattering of illusions, the uncomfortable questions it raised. It was about the irreversible changes to a community, the lasting scars on a family, and the tarnished dreams of a once promising young woman. A tragic end to a story that has left a community and a nation forever changed. In the face of tragedy, what lessons can we draw from the Brooke Skylar Richardson case? The narrative that unfolded was nothing less than a chilling cautionary tale. A picture-perfect cheerleader, a shocking crime revealed, a trial that gripped the nation, and finally, a verdict that left many in disbelief. This case underscores the importance of mental health support in our society. Without it, individuals like Brooke may feel trapped, unable to seek help, leading to dire consequences. It also sheds light on the perils of keeping secrets. A secret, no matter how deeply buried, can fester and eventually erupt, wreaking havoc. The Brooke Skylar Richardson case is not just about the crime or the trial. It's about a young woman, her struggles, and the desperate act she thought was her only way out. It's a stark reminder of the human capacity for both compassion and cruelty. In the end, the Brooke Skylar Richardson case serves as a chilling reminder that behind the most ordinary lives, the most extraordinary secrets can lurk.